So it's my pleasure to introduce our Chambers lecture for today for the spring 2016 semester. It's Hannah Chung, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in just a moment. I'll just say a few words about the Chambers Entrepreneurial Lectureship series, as well as briefly mention the entrepreneurial activities that are going on in the School of Engineering. The School of Engineering is developing and has for a number of years now had a strong focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And it's being done a lot. It's being done in collaboration with our neighbors here in Nashville, with the Nashville, sorry, I'm not used to this thing. Can you fix that?
Yep.
Fortunately, Hannah's savvy. It's been done with oh, it is, okay. I'm getting it now. I got how the clicker works. I now know how the clicker works, okay? I've tried all the buttons. I did a series of Monte Carlo steps, and then we participate, for example, with the National Entrepreneurship Center. We have exceptionally strong research programs at the engineering medicine, and medical devices, and image-guided surgery, and so on. We have a large institutional investment in digital learning with the largest NUS in the world, focused on software engineering, on innovation on mobile devices. We have companies being spun off by our faculty, companies being spun off by our undergraduate and graduate students. And we have a capstone design course where students conduct projects, which many of which are sponsored by local companies. And we're very excited this year, these new engineering science building will be opened in the summer of this year, and it includes the Innovation Center, which will be a place where students and faculty and staff could come and get advice on how to start companies. We'll also have a makerspace in there, and this is moving ahead with the recent announcement of the director of the Innovation Center. Chambers Entrepreneurial Lecture Series is endowed by the Chambers Family Medical Foundation. This is the fourth of these lectures. The Chambers family has a very long association with the School of Engineering through 3 generations. And Jason Chambers is a member of our Board of Visitors, and we are very grateful to the Chambers family for endowing this lecture series. They've endowed this lecture series with the idea of encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation amongst our students here. So let me say a little bit about Hannah Chung. She has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Northwestern University, often known as the Vanderbilt of the Harvard is the Vanderbilt of the Northeast, but we have a branch in the Midwest as well. That's called Northwestern. She's the co-founder and chief creative officer of Sproutel, and she's going to talk about that, I'm sure, today. Creator of Jerry the Bear, which is Jerry the Bear is here with us. one of the Jerry the Bears.
Yes.
She was a co-founder at 19 whilst at Northwestern of Design for America, which is a national student organization helping students solve local social problems. We have a DFA chapter here in Nashville, and earlier today Hannah went and helped to judge some DFA projects here at She's been recognized in many different ways. Sproutel has been recognized as one of the 32 companies representing diversity in tech by the White House and President Obama, who's here also with Jerry and Hannah. Jerry the Bear is there. Inc. magazine named her as one of the top 15 women to watch in tech. Several other honors here, which I won't go into. She's a speaker at numerous conferences, including tech, some of the TED conferences, and South by Southwest in that other town in Texas that we like to compare ourselves to, Austin. We compare ourselves favorably to Austin. And so it's my pleasure then to introduce Hannah, who's going to present the Chambers Entrepreneurship Lecture.
Perfect.
Hannah?
Thank you. Oh. Sorry. No worries. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having an awesome day, regardless of the crazy weather we've been having with hail and rain and everything. But I will say it's a better weather than Providence, Rhode Island, so I'm still satisfied with the weather condition here. But I'm super honored to be a part of this. Thank you so much for Vanderbilt University and the engineering school for inviting me to share my story about Jerry the bear. I hope you will enjoy the journey I'm going to share, and hopefully it will be a fun presentation too. So today, I'm here with my little friend Jerry. Jerry is a really special friend for me. Some people call me a mama bear because I guess I walk around with this bear all the time. But this bear really is a really cool friend for kids with type 1 diabetes. So Jerry has type 1 diabetes, and the idea is that kids, when they're newly diagnosed or as a young child who has type 1 diabetes, they have a friend just like them to experience, having a friend who can relate to, who they can relate to, and also kind of understand what they're going through. So Jerry here, you can squeeze his finger to check how he's feeling. Right now, his blood sugar level is in a good range. That's why he's feeling good. Of course, if his blood sugar level is high or low, he will say his symptoms like, I have to pee, I feel dizzy, etc. Jerry has different injection sites where you can give him insulin. He also comes with different food cards like the cracker or an insulin pen that you can help him manage his diabetes. Jerry also has a storybook of him training for the All-Stars game. So that's kind of like the Olympics game in the bear world. So Jerry will travel to different worlds, like the mountains and the forest, and meet friends like Momo the monkey, George the vegetarian shark, kind of help his friends resolve a conflict, but also learn a diabetes lesson along the way. And the goal of that is to really help kids to understand what kind of social situation they might be experiencing with type 1 diabetes and how to manage those. We kind of have a game design element to this bear where in order to unlock new stories, you need to master a set of tasks that Jerry gives to you that might be, rotate your sites, check his blood sugar level 5 times a day or something like that, to kind of encourage kids to bridge the concept of social situation in stories and also actual management they have to go through. Jerry is really special to me. I started working on this when I was an undergrad as a first DFA project, but along the way, Jerry taught me a lot of different things. Not only Jerry taught me what design is or how to bridge art and engineering together, he really taught me why empathy, that human-centered design is really important to make something really meaningful. I would say for me, the first moment I felt like I had to practice empathy, that action was when I was in 6th grade. There was a year when my grandfather passed away from having a hyperglycemia shock, having type 2 diabetes. Also 6 months after, my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And for me, I will say that was the first time I heard about the word type 2 diabetes and how serious that condition can be for the family. My dad, he was really stressed in every single occasions of social settings because all the food that he was eating became math. He would have to think about how many carbs he's eating. And also, he kind of felt shy to talk about type 2 diabetes with his peers and other fellow professors. My dad is in the academia role too. So, he coming home, he was never happy coming home. At dinner table, he was never smiling, really. But one day, he ordered this giant running machine and started walking. And his goal was, instead of me taking 15 pills a day, I would rather walk 10 miles a day to manage, to figure out how to manage my diabetes without taking pills. And it was a really big change, and it was really stressful for him. But along the way, as a family, we thought, well, my dad loves positive reinforcement. What if we go through the similar life change that my dad is going through? So we started eating low-carb meals, lots of salads, no snacks or no sugary drinks allowed, to the point that some people will call my mom, like, are you a goat? Why are you eating so many lettuces? But along the way, for me, I will tell my dad, like, hey, Dad, it's okay if your blood sugar level is low or high. You're doing great. And sometimes I'll sit next to my dad and check my blood sugar level too, to kind of get interested in what he has to go through. In 2 months, my dad lost about 40 pounds. And even still, he kind of still walks 10 miles a day and tried to minimize taking pills and things like that. And that was about like 10 years ago. But looking back, that experience with my family was a huge impact for me and the journey that I have. But as a little tiny teenager, I did not know what that was going to lead towards to me. But I knew that the areas of health and that engineering side of things, helping people, was something that was really interesting. So that's kind of where I wanted to continue my journey more. But I will say for me, I loved art and I love engineering. I actually moved back to the States to continue high school here from Korea because in the Korean education system, I couldn't study both. If I wanted to choose art, basically in the Korean education system, you had to choose a track in the end of your middle school, and that was set path for you until end of college. And what happened was, if I choose engineering, I couldn't study art. If I choose art, I couldn't learn calculus. And for me, I think you need to learn calculus to really understand math. So for me, from that dilemma, I decided to homestay at a family's place in Wisconsin and kind of continue exploring this combination of what this could be. But I will say, even in high school, it was still hard how to combine these two disciplines together. So for my freshman year in college, I actually entered Northwestern as a biomedical engineering major, thinking that the first day I can start working on artificial hearts. Day one, I thought that was going to be the case, but instead I was in the basement using a pipette, and I realized I like hammers and sewing and mills more than a tiny pipette, so I decided to change my major to mechanical engineering. But along the way, I met a lot of really cool mentors. One of them taught me what design is as a creative solving process, and I also met this faculty member named Liz Gerber, who had the idea of what if you can use design as a way to solve problems around social impact. And for me, I didn't know what that really meant, but it was an idea for me to kind of be more open-minded and be creative in the way I can solve problems. So with Liz and two other co-founders, Mert and Yuri, we launched Design for America. And from that project, we started to look at what's the first project we can work on. And happened to be, we stumbled upon this competition from the Diabetes Mind blog. It's the largest blog for people with type 1 diabetes. And they gave us this project prompt of how can you help the lives of people living with diabetes. Pure luck. I didn't look for a diabetes problem. The first project happened to be in diabetes. And I got really excited because it was something that I felt really passionate. Immediately looking at this problem statement, I could think of my dad. But as designers, I realized, well, maybe I should pretend I don't know anything about diabetes to kind of have a fresh perspective walking into this problem to really see what the space is really like. And so what we did was we went to the hospitals and talked to doctors. In a shorter amount of time, we realized that people itself in a problem statement is a really broad user group, but we realized there's nothing really much for children. And what we've realized is that kids with type 1 diabetes get diagnosed with the condition around 3 to 7 years old, and they realize that they have type 1 diabetes at an ER room. So usually what happens is that a parent will find a child laying down on a couch or drinking lots of water or peeing and thinking that something is wrong. So take the child to the ER room and they realize the child has type 1 diabetes. Usually the blood sugar level is extremely high or extremely low. But what happens after that is all these parents have to go through a boot camp of a day or 3 day long program, basically to learn everything you need to learn about type 1 diabetes, and you can send off to home and you can take care of your child basically. But as you can imagine as a parent, you are still in the shock stage of, I didn't know my child has type 1 diabetes. What is going to happen to my child? And you have all this responsibility you need to carry with you to make sure your child is feeling really good. Along with that, kids, overnight, their life has changed. They prick their fingers 8 times a day, and in the middle of the night, parents come into their bedroom to make sure they're feeling really good. And a lot of times, they are the only ones at school with type 1 diabetes. So some kids have a misconception that type 1 diabetes is contagious, that they don't want to touch them. So that's a lot of isolation that kids go through, and they don't know how to explain diabetes really well. So from that experience and the insight that we have gathered, we kind of revised our problem statement to be, how can we help the lives of kids living with a type 1 diabetes? But we thought that problem statement itself was not specific enough. So what we did was, okay, we know parents and children go through a very emotional experience. Let's go into the homes and see how they cope with their emotions. And when we went to the homes, we saw something really, really interesting. So I'm going to ask the audience, how many of you guys had a plush animal or a teddy bear growing up? All of us, right? These kids also had a teddy bear and a plush animal, with them. It probably should be in a washer or should be washed a little bit. But the action that kids were doing was something really interesting. Kids were actually pricking their stuffed animal fingers. Kids were stapling a drawing of a pump onto their fur to kind of mimic what they were going through exactly to this teddy bear. So from that insight, we thought, kids want to learn about type 1 diabetes. They just don't know how to. So how can you make type 1 diabetes education really fun for kids to learn that? So with that insight, we came up with this idea in a napkin sketch called Jerry the Bear. And this idea helped us win the most creative prize from the competition. And I will say, as a freshman student, when you win the competition with the judges from IDEO and you win a big prize to launch Design for America, you feel like you kind of solved type 1 diabetes from that momentum, but that is really not true. And I think as a naive student, it took me a year to realize a napkin sketch that was never validated with users or never been tested is a huge failure. And the fact that I was saying as if that was a successful solution was very embarrassing. So as my teammates and I thought, well, we need to start building things, so let's start building it. But before we got to that point, we actually approached this mentor that we have and asked whether you have graduate students who wants to continue. And this professor pulled up this one book called How to Make Things Talk from the Make magazine, gave it to us saying, you guys are engineers, why don't you guys build it? And it was kind of like this moment where, yeah, maybe we should start building this as an engineer. So we actually devised an independent study course for 10 weeks to build our first prototype. And we did make it, and it looked like that. So this adorable little girl is holding this creepy little bear. But this prototype had many problems. Not only it had the blinking eye hacked out of a Furby, I didn't know how to sew or make a plush animal at that point. So it was a hard carved model foam stapled with a fur to look like a teddy bear. And also, the head of this bear is held by 2 3-inch nails. So if you actually don't hold the bear like that, the head might fall off. But it was my first time that I applied my engineering basic courses to something that works, and I was so proud of it. And being the first prototype with the labor of sweat and hard work, I actually fell in love with this prototype. And and when you talk to designers and different folks, they might say there's a phrase called "kill your darlings," and what that means is that you need to you need to remove yourself from the attachment of your love towards the first idea or first prototype. And I definitely did not learn a lesson early enough, and I loved this bear so much, and I was really, really proud of it. But that lesson was. I learned a lesson pretty quickly afterwards from my first testing session with a child. We got reached out by this little kid. His name was Adam, who was 7 at the time, who was so excited about Jerry the Bear as an idea. So we scheduled this testing session, and for 2 weeks, he was waiting with his brother to meet this Jerry the Bear. And me in love with this bear was so excited to show this bear to this little child. So when he got to his home, we covered the bear in a blanket. And then when Adam was like, "Is that Jerry?" and we unveiled this blanket, and the first thing Adam said was, "Is that Jerry?" That is nothing what I've imagined before. And then for the whole hour, he ripped everything to shreds. From things like, "Is that a bear really? Doesn't look like a bear." To, "Jerry has 1-digit blood glucose level number. I will be dead by then." And he's saying all these really extreme things, and it was really, really painful. And people might, when I share this story, people might say that, "Oh, it's a huge failure. Your prototype didn't work." But there's one thing that worked really well. It's the fact that the idea of Jerry the Bear was so compelling to this little child with type 1 diabetes that he wanted to see this bear for 2 weeks and couldn't wait for it. So from that insight, we thought to ourselves, well, maybe the prototype didn't work. And looking back, if we had a plush animal with a walkie-talkie inside, it could have achieved the same amount of insight they wanted to get from this 10-week mechatronic experiment that we had to make with this bear. So we decided to continue more and more and more. And along the way, we had this massive transition from this extracurricular project becoming our course project, made about 10 different independent studies from IP to branding, mechanical engineering to manufacturing and things like that, and got a lot of grants, from small grants of $100 to winning another competition for $5,000. And we realized from that experience, we met a lot of cool mentors around toys and businesses in Providence, so we thought we wanted to move to Providence to try this out. So that journey was kind of interesting. So my co-founder Erin and I convinced our deans to let us take our classes over Skype, so we can work on Jerry the Bear full-time in Providence while taking classes over from Northwestern. And the deal was, we'll let you do that, but make sure you come back to graduation in person to get your diploma. So it was a good deal that we can go along with. And from there, we went through a business accelerator program to kind of kick off our business and incorporate a company, Sproutel, as a for-profit company. But in the product development process, learning from Adam was a really impactful moment for us. So we thought to ourselves, well, let's start from ground zero. What can we really learn from the whole research experience from the beginning? And let's really understand what family have to go through to make our prototype more meaningful. So it started from me hacking my old plush animals from cutting it apart, understanding how the animals are being made. I will say I had to say sorry to all of my plush animals for doing harmful surgery processes. It was very painful, but I got used to it afterwards. And we tried to look for events and communities to really talk to parents about what kind of stress and emotional levels that they are going through. So we'll start kind of making this kind of map we call the emotional journey map to see what are the key moments that we identify in the early diagnosis process and what kind of feelings that kids are going through to experience that. And it started from this is our second prototype actually, and we thought to ourselves, well, there's a tendency to, you want to test with 5 or 10 kids before you move on. But for us, we decided to move on with this process of, it doesn't matter you test with 1 child or 2 children. Let's make as many times as possible in many iterations to work on something that's more meaningful instead of making the one prototype that's more complete and test with too many people early on at once. So we built more and more and more. As you can see, the inner guts is becoming more simpler, and you can see some of our PCB boards is becoming simpler and simpler. And in the process, there are many weird testing moments. There's a case where Jerry's mouth was on fire, so he was beaming smoke out of his mouth. The one really funny incident on the PCB board that we had was there was one time Jerry will just sing Spanish dubstep music. And we thought to ourselves, why is this happening? And I will say it was a 2-month quest to understand why that was happening. So 2 months after, we actually went back to our professors at Northwestern, and his name is Michael Peshkin. Professor Peshkin, I know this is silly, but Jerry's singing Spanish dubstep music, but it doesn't sing at Northwestern. Right? We don't know why, but why is it happening? And he looks at the spec sheet with his giant magnifying glass, and he goes, aha, you forgot to solder this one pin. And apparently it's acting like an AM radio station and picking up a Spanish radio station. So that was like our 2-month quest to really figure out why Jerry was singing Spanish music. But in the research, and also along the way, we did a lot of testing sessions with kids, and there was a time when you feed Jerry will say, delicious, banana, banana, and it will give the confirmation what the food card was. And as an engineer, for me, I love confirmation. And I thought that was like my dream come true, like, oh my God, I'm teaching kids about confirmation. So we made 10 of these bears and gave it to hour-long sessions for the 4-year-olds and say, hey, play with Jerry, I'll see you guys afterwards, to kind of see how they were playing with these bears. And what happened was, in the end, we had 10 sick bears. And what happened was, when Jerry was saying, banana, 4-year-olds thought Jerry wanted more bananas. And banana is 23 carbs, and it kind of spikes up your blood sugar level pretty quickly. So in that hour-long session, kids would keep feeding banana nonstop, that we ended up having 10 hyperglycemic bears. It was in serious conditions. So from that experience, we thought, you know what, we're going to cut out the food name and just say, delicious, or something like that. So that was my learning lessons of what you think will work sometimes doesn't work with kids as young as 4-year-olds. Along the way, our interaction with kids had really become good, and we also found some different ways of making that happen. One of them is we realized a bear suit can be really helpful in testing with children. This story is really interesting because if someone asks, why did you get a bear suit? Nothing related to the company at all. I was about to graduate, work in a bear project, made sense to get a bear pajama as a graduation gift. So I got the bear pajama as a graduation gift. And my co-founder was really embarrassed by it. And my co-founder Erin was like, hey, Hannah, like that's embarrassing. Please do not wear this in public. It's really embarrassing. But 3 days after, we got invited by a local community to join a diabetes walk and allowing us to have some testing sessions. And it was really cold in March, so I thought I'm going to wear this bear suit for warmth, and I'll walk around and I'll do some testing session. But in the 2-hour span, what we realized was that all the kids came to me and all the adults went to Aaron. And we thought to ourselves, well, why is this happening? And we realized that sometimes kids want to be in a comfortable environment, and as an adult, when you wear a funny suit like a bear suit, you're just a very funny person to interact with, to share your thoughts and stuff. So in a 2-hour span, I was able to talk to 40 kids who are introverts and extroverts about anything they think about Jerry the bear, and that inspired Aaron to also get a bear suit. So when you go to conferences, we'll walk around in a bear suit with a bear, and we sometimes go to investors meeting at a conference in a bear suit, and that's how we got our nickname called the Bear People. And along the way, I think kids are very interesting people to work with. And this story actually really taught me how human-centered design never really ends. So there was, in this prototype, this is the 7th prototype that we built, and we thought it was pretty complete. The caring model of just checking your blood sugar level, giving insulin, and feeding carbs was pretty set, and the formula worked really well. So we thought, if we get good results from this testing session, we're ready for production. We're so excited about that. So what we did was we identified 10 groups of families in Rhode Island. Half of the kids were newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The other half have had diabetes for more than 6 months. So we gave the bears to the families with a journal and a camera and say, hey, play with this bear, just log how many times you're playing, and we'll pick it up in the end of the week. So we picked up these journals and the play session logs. And kids who are newly diagnosed with diabetes, they play with Jerry for 3 hours every single day for 7 days. 21 hours of logging time, that's really amazing. However, kids who have had diabetes who are more experienced with type 1 diabetes, they will play with Jerry for 2 days really actively and not play with this bear at all. So that was really interesting because we want Jerry to be more engaging than a typical 2-week span of a toy, but that result was not promising for us. And we asked the kids why. The kids are saying things like, who is Jerry? What is Jerry's personality like? Is Jerry confident? Is Jerry scared? Is Jerry fun to play with? Who is Jerry? And then we realized that pure caring model, which is really on the functionality, doesn't give any context of who Jerry is. And that really taught us the importance of, in order to make Jerry as a special friend for them, it has to be the empathetic friend who can understand what they're going through. And story is a way to really facilitate that. So from that insight, it gave us another year of product development on the storytelling side to really make the character development, develop Jerry as a character in a storyline, find all his friends and design all his friends to make it happen. So that was kind of like the unexpected surprise that we had to design and stuff. And this is kind of like the overall prototypes that we have built. So before our first production run, we built 29 different prototypes and tested with about 350 kids. And as you can see from that creepy bear that I talked about, to all the way in the bottom ones where we are trying different forms and factors to kind of make Jerry more unique and playful in aspect when you look at him. And the first production run, setting up the small manufacturing is another story, but it was very complex to figure out the supply chain that can build 250 bears really efficiently. So what happened was we'll make the electronics in China, ship that all the way to Providence, and we'll do all the final assemblies and the important parts, and ship those all the way back to Phoenix, Arizona, who is our plush factory. And actually, there are only 2 plush factories in the United States existing. One of them only makes plush animals 5 feet taller, and the other one makes a normal size of plush animal. So we're working with the normal size plush animal factory groups. So this is a time where, like a couple days before Christmas, we were assembling the casing for the bear. That's how it looked like in the complete assembly. Aaron making the insulin pens with this injecting the glue with the syringe to make sure it's seamless. And I was building, so each bear has 10 food cards. I was making 2,500 food cards in a week, getting the stickers, getting the assembly and stuff like that. And this experience was really exciting and scary at the same time. Exciting because you're shipping the bears out to the children. Scary thinking that I don't know what is going to happen when it's out in the wild. So it was a very interesting emotional journey I had to go through while clipping through every single food cart I had to build. And we did ship our first production run in the Christmas of 2013, and we reached 2% of kids newly diagnosed that year. And the results we have been getting was really powerful. Not only kids feel confident to talk about their diabetes, but also siblings are interested to learn about type 1 diabetes too. And it was really interesting to see how Jerry is becoming a family member for these families to talk about type 1 diabetes and being the facilitator. But before I go on to more impact that we have seen, we actually did a Skype call with all these families to kind of hear their testimonial. We made that a couple of summers ago for another pre-order campaign, but I'd love to show it to you in a video form. Hold on.
We went in there thinking that he might have like a bladder infection or something.
We just noticed that he was drinking a lot of water.
She ate the breakfast that a 19-year-old boy would eat.
She was like laying on the couch. She was usually a hyperactive girl who would dance and jump around.
Diagnosis was overwhelming and terrifying.
Everything stood still for a few days until we even absorbed the fact that we were going to be living with diabetes.
Throw a bunch of information at you and say, okay, bye.
We count her carbs for her, and as you can imagine, that's, it's difficult at times.
She was at a big table and there were a bunch of kids eating lunch and she needed to have. And this other little girl was like, you have to do that at the table. I don't want her to see the difference.
Has it been hard? Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing fun about diabetes, so we can insert even like an ounce of fun into something to make the learning exciting and give them somebody to share it with. That has made a huge difference.
I'm Aaron.
I am Hannah, and we are the mama bear and the papa bear.
And this summer, we're launching a big campaign to get Jerry into the hands of every child newly diagnosed. So I'd love it if you could share some stories about your experience with Jerry.
I think it helped them both conceptualize what is heart.
When people come over and people ask Connor questions, he goes to get Jerry.
He's more than just a learning tool for her. He's a learning tool to engage, the village, the community, the kids around us.
I wish that we had from day one.
Jerry's changed our lives. I mean, it's just really, it's been a great way to make diabetes fun, and at the same time, it's a very serious topic that, Matt has been able to learn a lot more about diabetes, so thank you.
Awesome. So that's a testimony we have heard from families, which has been really powerful for us. And it was really amazing to really see what the impact that Jerry is having to his children, which really fueled us to become better at it. Some of the things that we have seen was these families really helped us validate a couple important learning lessons that we did with Jerry. First is lowering the barrier to access to learn about type 1 diabetes has been really helpful. And what we did was instead of celebrating, good blood glucose level is good, we'll say the fact that you're trying to make sure he's feeling good and the fact that you're checking his blood sugar level multiple times, that effort is something to celebrate. And that was the area that a lot of families have mentioned that they resonate with. The second part was the storytelling piece and making the analogy as easy as a 4-year-old can understand has been really helpful. An example of that is when you go to like a type 1 diabetes session, when you talk about type 1 diabetes or describing it, they use analogies like broken lock, broken pancreas, broken keys. It's really difficult for even as an adult to understand that. But what we did was we made it super fun by saying in your body, you have sugar friends and insulin friends, and they need to dance together to make the energy that you need. But when you have diabetes, not all friends are there, so you have to call them up. So when you don't have enough sugar friends, you eat foods with carbs. When you need more insulin friends, you take shots. So that analogy was something playful for kids to understand, and it kind of made a conversation around type 1 diabetes really playful. And lastly, we didn't reinvent a new play. We still kept the core meaning of a teddy bear. And the powerful part of that is even Jerry the Bear is off, it still gives room to, for kids to kind of take Jerry into different environments, give him different genders, nicknames, and family relationships, and they can still put Jerry into different situations they want to play with. So, kids can come up with new play patterns beyond just a screenplay they can do with Jerry. And of course, that prototyping process never ends. Our UI, the wireframe, has to be revamped a ton because it's getting a lot of errors sometimes. So we had to kind of rehaul, make a new one, decrease our error rates. And the following year, we were able to reach 4% of kids newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and able to place Jerry into 25% of all pediatric endocrinologist office rooms. And for me, this whole journey of Jerry the Bear has been really exciting because even though we started from type 1 diabetes despair, Jerry really opened up how this playful aspect of health can be applied for different conditions, different age groups, for teens and also for the elderly. And it really helped us build a bigger vision that's never ending. And I think that was only possible because we were practicing human-centered design and really using empathy as a way to engage with the people. I think empathy is really powerful because it helps you build a language to connect with your users, connect with families, and also from that you build special relationships and you can connect in the emotional level and really understand what they're thinking through. And that also really helped me that I feel invested to bring Jerry into all different kids to have this bear in his hands, and I feel committed to making the vision happen. So I hope I can continue this Jerry more and more and more, journey with Jerry, and help more kids to have a bear in their hands to make health a really playful thing to do. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Hannah.
Thank you.
We have time for some questions.
Yes.
Have you thought about expanding Jerry for other pediatric diseases and having Jerry and Carrie and Mary in different shades with different missions?
Yeah, so we have been getting reached out from a lot of different organizations. So can Jerry be used for children with cancer, type 2 diabetes, ADHD, autism, etc. And those are all the areas that we are really interested. So now we're at the phase where kind of seeing at the Jerry the Bear form which area we can tap into, or can we use that the play learning outcomes that we have devised in a different form that we can help kids. But I think one step at a time. So we're currently focusing more on the type 1, type 2 diabetes space with some aspect of food allergy, the nutrition side of things. But that's hoping that our goal is to expand our product line to have a different type of products in that space too. So.
Learned so much, and you clearly are still learning. How much did you find helpful in research literature, like some of the socialization things, like you talked about the yum banana, or yum banana and confirmation. How much of that did you figure out just by doing it, or how much of it, how useful was the literature?
Yeah, so for us, every time when we want to devise a new behavior or things like that, we read a lot of research papers. So I will say robotics, the application for kids with special education or special conditions has been an area we have been reading a lot. We also read a lot of medical literatures, like where the type 1 diabetes field is going or type 2 diabetes field is going. I've been dabbling more into the learning sciences to understand children development and emotional development and things like that. I think reading those is really helpful. I will say it's a balance of you need to have the deeper understanding of what this means, but also have time to apply those to a new play pattern you want to build. But having that research and study has been really helpful for us to build our expertise. And when you want to work with different researchers or talk to our potential partners to work with, it has been a really powerful way for us to educate ourselves and have the language that we need to be more professional in some sense. But I think that process of reading those literature really excited our whole team to wanting to build a core specialty in certain areas they want to do a deep dive into. And we've been seeing more of our teammates saying, like, can you have more tinkering time to do a deep dive and things like that. So I think as a culture, trying to have a deeper ground in what they want to focus on, I think has been a really good change for us.
From an entrepreneurship point of view, how did you, it's one thing to have the idea, how did you make it a reality, especially the financial aspects, how did you back all those things?
Yeah, I think the financial aspect, as a college student, your parents are still supporting you. So I think it was easier to kind of go through that process. And but I think for us, it's kind of interesting where Aaron and I, Aaron's my co-founder, we didn't put our own money into the company. You know, we apply for grants in undergrad, and we apply for competitions. So it's kind of like a unique case. But because of that, I think that business accelerator program that we went through, with a small seed funding in a space, really helped us to prep ourselves to pitch to a larger group of angel investors. I think without that, it might have been a little bit challenging. But I think for us, knowing which financial stage we are and what kind of help we need, finding a program or a mentorship to help ourselves to accelerate in those different stages has been important to us, and I think that accelerator program has been helpful for us in the beginning stage to get to that point.
You actually mentioned something that I think we recognize, that the 4 years when a student is at college is actually a very good time to try and innovate, because of the very thing you mentioned. You have financial support already in place because you're a student.
Yeah.
And then you can have the facility, if the facilities are there.
Exactly.
Then you can innovate.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
I think for us, kind of going along with the point, the resources we have gotten from the university has immense. You know, I will say I still keep in touch with the 10 professors I worked with, working on Jerry the Bear. And you know, I realized when you have a passionate project and you reach out to a professor to learn a certain area, everybody wants to help you. And I think that was the attitude I took, because the attitude of me recognizing when I don't know things, I should feel comfortable saying I don't know and asking for help in that certain areas. So from that, that mentorship that I've gotten from the university has been really helpful. And then the shop and the resources and the small grants from departments, even the small $50, $100 can go a long way for student groups. So I think that has been really helpful. And the school allowing me to take independent studies, I think that kind of taught me how to be entrepreneurial in that confined curriculum setting per se. So I think that has been really helpful for me looking back, kind of like the action and the gut, going for the gut and things like that. That has been really helpful for me to think about that.
So you mentioned independent studies and taking courses on site when you were in Providence. How can you talk about sort of the flexibility that helped or maybe even hindered? I mean, engineering's a pretty tight curriculum.
Yeah.
What types of trade-offs did you have to make, or allowances did the university have to make?
That's a great question. So when we devise a independent study, you still have to devise your own curriculum. So in that sense, because engineering had a very strict curriculum, you still have to make sure you're learning those concepts while taking the independent study. I will say the great thing is you can focus on your own product, and you can have a lot of one-on-one time with your professor. The downside is I think you can learn a lot from the peer-to-peer setting. And that was one thing, because I'm not surrounded by my peers, I'm only having this one-to-one interaction with the professor. I kind of missed learning from how other people think, surrounded by my peers. I think that was like a biggest trade-off. But in order to get this independent studies though, it required a lot of effort for me to update the professors what is going on, ask a lot of questions. So it was like a long-term relationship building to get to that point for sure. So.
I guess since a lot of us are students, what part of like your university coursework or your university like engagements really helped you in your process of like product development or actually like creating the product?
I think it's hard to point out what course is helpful. I think the school culture, so Jerry the Bear started as an extracurricular project. And I think just being surrounded by people, even for extracurricular project or a school project, whatever, knowing how to utilize those resources from mentorship to whatever, I think that's really helpful. I think the school culture of being flexible to open to help students has been really helpful. I think the best courses are when you know you want to solve this exact one problem, and you can do a deep dive into learning that. I think you can kind of match make your course to align with that. But it's hard to point out which course is really helpful. I think it's more like you have to be in the action of building it more, be okay with failing, and trying to kind of dabble into more of the project-based learning and like building things to get more comfortable with it. I think if you can get that from the course, that's great. If you can get that from the extracurricular, that's even great too. So I think you just have to be more exposed to it.
Why the name Jerry?
That's a great question. So the real story and what people think are kind of different. So for us, we had to come up with the bear name. We realized we were not that creative in coming up with names. And the one name that we thought of was, my teammates were in crew at the time, and there was a big guy named Jerry the Bear that they called. So we thought Jerry the Bear is a great name. We'll just go with Jerry the Bear. And when we talk to parents, they think it's, oh, Jerry from Jerry Garcia. They're all like the Dead music fans, and they think it's like a perfect representation of that. So we just let parents think the way they want to think, but the real story is like we really struggled coming up with the name of the bear.
Them as well.
Yeah, so, yeah, but I think parents' story is like so much better, but in reality that's not the case, but yeah, so.
What advice, oh, sorry. What advice do you have for engineering professors who are meeting students like you coming through an engineering program that you wish had been different for you originally?
I think that's a great question. I have found the folks that I still keep in touch with, they really push me to start building early. And I think there's a balance between, you kind of need to learn some theories to know how to build it, but there's also, you need to build first to know what you need to learn. But a lot of the great professors has been, for me, in our conversation, really thinking engineering in a really broader concept. Not all engineers might be in engineering, they might go to different professions. Even engineers, as like, there's a way, engineers work with a lot of designers. What kind of skills do you need to learn to work well with other teammates? We talk about communication really well, so it was really helpful in that conversations to think early on that engineering is just not one field or whatever. The thinking style that you learn, ability to wear different hats and things like that, and able to work well with other teammates, there's so many social skills and areas that you need to learn. But I think having that exposure was helpful for me in a sense to think, allowing me to think design as a really broad thing, also as engineering. So I think having that exposure for students early on is really helpful to have a very open-minded way coming into the engineering school and taking different courses.
Last question.
How did you arrive at the decision to launch your own company right out of your undergraduate degree as opposed to maybe going to some big product design firm?
Yeah, I actually, that's a great question. So I will say, looking back, the action of launching Design for America and working on Jerry the Bear was very entrepreneurial, but I will say I didn't know that was really entrepreneurship until I graduated. In my parents also being in academia, I never talked to someone who was an entrepreneur in business, so I thought either I stay in academia and research, or I go to a company or a design firm to work. So I tried all of those. I did a design research professor at Northwestern, realized I want to build things and actually take this to the market and take it to the consumers. That was much more something I want to do. I also interned at Ford Motor Company. I also interned at a radius product development firm to kind of see the extreme ends. But the overall learning I've had is I learned a ton from all the experiences, but I realized that I get more excited and I am more creative when I'm working something that is meaningful. And in my philosophy, when something has a social impact component to it. So from that experiences, I had two choices, which was continue Design for America or continue Jerry the Bear. But Jerry the Bear was so early on as a concept-wise, where it seems something where I can learn the most and really find a way who I want to be as an engineer and a designer. And it kind of seemed more of an open book for me. So that's the reason why I chose Jerry the Bear and continued, and I'm really glad I did that. So.
Well, let's thank Hannah for a terrific talk.